Hello and welcome to Prague. We are really glad to have you here with us. First of all, you have traveled all over the world. I know it, we know it because we have read some of your books. But tell me, what do you think about Prague?
Prague, well, I've just been here for a few days. This is my first time in Prague, so it's all fun to see. But when I come for the first time in a place, I don't do anything usual. I just do the touristic stuff. I would need to stay like a long time to think about doing a book about Prague.
Like Dan Brown, maybe?
Dan Brown, he has done that, yeah. Yeah, I'm not familiar with Dan Brown's books.
His newest bestseller is The Secret of Secrets, and it's about Prague. And
I should read that.
Never mind. And do you have some associations with Czech Republic, for example? Just a curious question.
No, not that I can think of like that. No.
Because, for example, it's funny, Czechs always think about themselves. We think about ourselves, that we are really good at picking mushrooms, for example.
And picking mushrooms.
Drinking and producing beer, and also a little bit good in ice hockey. So maybe you are a Canadian, so maybe
you have a good literature scene as well. Because I remember back in the days I was reading a book by Milan Kundera, Kafka, of course. So that's just these two is enough.
A few years ago, you said that you don't travel so much anymore because of the kids. Is it still true?
Well, we've stopped traveling like that, humanitary wise, mainly because of the children, and it was not the plan for us to do that all the time. And now, while the children are older and they study outside the house, so we could do again, but it's a different time now. So I knew we wouldn't do that all of our life, because humanitarian work, it's more for young people. I think so. And it was a part of my life that I really enjoyed, and it was nice to do books about that. But I've done 4 books about traveling. And I was afraid if I would do a 5th or 6th, it would be a different country if I would go away. But if I repeat myself, it seems to be the same. I don't know. So I was glad to change and to do different books that I wanted to do, but I was just keep postponing them. Because I was coming back from a trip and I was thinking, I'll work on the Burma book, I'll work on the Jerusalem book. But after that, I wanted to try different type of books.
Maybe we will be talking about that later. But let's talk now about your new comics and the reason you are here. I have to admit that I really liked all of your 4 comics you mentioned, which were published here in Czech Republic also. Mm-hmm. It means your comic autobiographical reportages from Shenzhen, Pyongyang, Jerusalem and Burma, Myanmar, let's say. Mm-hmm. Now you have made another beautiful non-fiction book, but this time only biographical. How did you come up with the person of Eadweard Muybridgeovi, a famous photographer? Is it because you are an animator yourself, or? Yeah,
that's part of the whole thing, because when I do a book, usually I've been thinking about it for a long time. So I was thinking of doing a biography book, because I read a lot of biography and I really enjoyed reading that. And I was thinking I'd like to try that exercise someday. I've done lots of books where it's me, and I was thinking it would be nice to talk about someone else with no attachment to me at all. And studying in animation, I had the book of Muybridge. I was 18 years old, and I was watching all of these sequence of movements that he has condensed in 2 books called Animal in Motion and Human in Motion. So I was looking through that. Like most of the students in animation, we all had the book. It's still a reference today. They're still using it. And for me, for the longest time, I knew Muybridge just because of these 2 books. And I thought he was kind of a scientific guy who did that back in the days, I could notice that the photos were very old and they were from Victorian era, which was quite interesting. But then I learned about his life, I think by a podcast or a show or a documentary, and I thought, wow, he was before doing that a famous landscape photographer, and he had a crazy life. He killed someone, he was on trial, and then he invented a projection. He was a projectionist as well. He invented the first projection. I thought, wow, that's an incredible life. And I says he would be a good subject for a book. And I looked through it. I couldn't find no biography in French. They were only in English, and he's not very well known. So I thought, well, it would be interesting to talk about this guy, because if you talk about a very famous one, there's no big deal. But I thought, yeah, nobody knows about Muybridge. It would be fun to work on that.
It's interesting because a lot of people usually say that they don't know the photographer, but they do know his photographs. For example.
We all know the horse, but we don't know the context, and the context is quite interesting of his life, and then what was happening before that, and in the time he was right at the beginning of photography. I mean, instant photography was not even existing. He had to invent that, and to have all that set up with these 12 camera and have the horse in front. It's quite a challenge. I mean, today we know that it would cost $1 million to have that picture. That's what the Stanford pay. So the funny thing, it's the Stanford from the famous University of Stanford. So that was interesting to talk, because I talk about Muybridge, but I really like to talk about the whole context, which was, Stanford was the richest guy back in the days. So he wanted to have that picture, and Muybridge was the guy to find that, to achieve that.
And do you think he was a workaholic or genius or lunatic or something between?
He was not a very easy guy to be with, because he was very nervous and workaholic, probably because he has done so much work when you look at all the picture he has taken, and he was inventing always new things. The shutter, I mean, it's so basic for a camera to have a shutter speed and all that, so he has invented the shutter. And but he was not an easy guy to live with, because he would go into rage, and he had a very bad temper. And when at the end of his life someone asked him if he regret to have the fact that he has killed a man, he says, I regret just one thing, that he didn't suffer long enough. So he was not a very easy guy to be with.
And do you think the reason is the accident he had? Or?
That's what people have said in his trial, and I don't know the real answer, but after that they said he has changed, because he was 9 days in coma, and then he worked in a bank. Well, he opened up a bank at some point. He was more of a business guy, and all of a sudden, boom, he just changed, and then he goes in Europe, and he comes back, and he knows how to take picture. We don't know exactly where he learned that, but that's right at the beginning of photo, and he goes for photos, but not portrait, because that's too still for him. He goes in the wild, and he takes pictures of mountains, and he was one of the first doing that. A famous guy, Carlton Watkins, did before, but he did it in a way that people were very sensible to his landscape, and he became the most famous, one of the famous photographers of United States back in the days.
And in your eyes, was Muybridge more of a gifted artist or more like obsessive scientist?
Yeah, it's both.
What drove him more?
The first part of his life is more artistic, even though at the time to be able to handle a camera and to work with all these chemicals, because you had to prepare the photo, to take the picture and then to develop the photo all in one shot. It was like it was a very precise process, and you need to know how to handle these chemicals. And somehow he managed to know it very well, because he has done instant photo before anyone. The speed of a horse running, it's 1/1000th of a second back in in that time, people were still using their hat in front of the camera, and they would count to 10, to 8, and then that was it. And he had to take instant photo very, very fast. So he was, a mad scientist somehow, and a very good. He had a very good artistic sense, because when you look at his pictures, the composition and they're all very nice. They're very interesting.
Yeah, you had met scientists. He has really great, messy hair and really impressive beard. We can see it on his photographic portraits also. Was it fun to draw him?
It's funny because there's a few things that I don't really like to draw. It's people with beard and horses, because it's a bit complicated to draw. And but it was a good story, and you just have to adapt. And now I'm okay with beard people, and horse I'm better, but not great. But you just have to work on it, and that the drawing is just one tool to the narration, so you have to adjust yourself. So, but it was fun in a way that he was kind of even though he made a lot of money all of his life, he was always struggling, and at the end he was living with his cousin in a small house. He looked like a tramp. That's why the people at university were happy when he left, because first he was taking pictures of naked people, and in the middle of the university in Pennsylvania, it was not easy in a Victorian era. And he had there was a hole in his hat, and one of the university a teacher one day said, you look like a tramp, and he was surprised. What do you mean? He says, well, there's a hole in your hat. And he took his hat and he looked at it. Oh yeah, that's true. Like, he was not aware of himself a lot, and that was fun to draw, because he looked a bit like Charlie Chaplin wearing his big pants, and nothing very fancy.
Because of your comics, I have now my profile photo on movie database. I have Eadweardovi Muybridgeovi because of your comics.
Okay.
I really like it. I didn't want to spoil the story, but Eadweardovi Muybridgeovi is a real person, and you have mentioned it by yourself. So I will ask anyway. There is one really crazy scene, the tragic one, as you said. Eadweard shot a lover of his wife. He's on trial and faces the gallows, the execution. But he's set free. He's acquitted by the jury full of white men, which sympathize with him. What do you think about this in a sense of, let's say, in a sense of justice, and on one side, and in a sense of, let's say, history of art that we could be?
Well, for me,
if
you kill someone, you should go in prison. There's no there's no debate about that. But it tells a lot about the time. I mean, it's California. There was two men for one woman, I think. And they were all married men, was the jury, and they acquitted him, which is crazy. I think that's the last time that ever happened in the history of the United States. I thought it was interesting to mention, but yeah, for me that's incredible. I mean, today that would be impossible.
You also nicely incorporated his photographs directly into the comics. How does his work affect you? His landscapes, his moments, his stopping of the motion, his composition, for example?
Yeah, I didn't plan to put the pictures, like the photos, the real photo in the book, but while I was working on it, I was watching all these beautiful pictures, and I was thinking, okay, I'm just going to redraw them. Then I thought, why redraw them? Because I'm never going to be, I thought it's just, people are going to go on YouTube or on internet and going to check the real pictures. I said, why not use them? Because you go to the Library in Congress in the United States and you can use them. They're copyrighted free. So I didn't put them inside my drawing, so they're on a separate page. So you get to see the Yosemite landscape he did when he was working on the lighthouse on the west coast of the United States. They're all really beautiful pictures. So I was glad to put that in the book. So you read, you see the pictures, it all works together. And that was not planned. I just realized that, instead of going to search the image, I might as well put it there.
His life was full of ups and downs. Do you think he felt like a successful person and famous person at the end of his life?
We don't have. He didn't write anything at the end, so we don't know exactly. He was very successful at selling photos. He was not paid by Stanford to do all that, but he would keep the rights of the horse pictures. And Stanford had used it as well, and he sold a lot of pictures of that horse, that's for sure. So at one point in his life, he must have been very rich, but then he decided to publish and to make books with that, and he was a pretty bad publisher, because the only version of the books that he did after the Pennsylvania work was it's a pile of 7 huge books that he was selling. And nobody would buy that. It was too expensive. So after he died, an English publisher, just before he died, condensed all that in 2 books. The one that I bought when I was 18. And they are still around. I mean, you can still buy them today. That's what I call a bestseller. I mean, it's more than 100 years now. And ups and downs all of his life. And I think he at one point he liked it when people would call him a professor because he was more of a scientist. He'd CSM, and then he was in a way right. He go to France and he see Jules-Étienne Marais, who was a scientist. He was a doctor, and he invented lots of incredible things. But Muybridge helped him to do what is called the chronophotographie. So it was like a gun who could take very quickly photos, and Etienne Marais have used that quite a lot. So he actually worked with Marais, so he was somehow in the same group of scientists. So at the end of his life, he would see himself as a scientist, most probably than a photography. And he changed like that from all his life to being a photographer, scientist, and he was kind of a showman, because when he was doing his presentation, apparently he would talk and be very alive, and he would put on quite a performance apparently. So he was kind of 3 things all together.
Okay. If I can be a little bit, let's say, personal, because I love comics and came to reading comics because of people like Neil Gaiman, Bill Watterson, Edward Gorey, and so on. Then I found you, Joe Sacco, Chris Ware, and these. Do you have your own role models or
in comic
some
books?
Inspiration?
Oh yes, so much, because even now today I still read a lot of comics, and I'm always surprised by what the young people, like the young generation, are doing now, and what you can still do with comic books that is very creative and inventive. It's very fun, and it's fascinating to watch. But when I was younger, my influence were Moebius, even though I have nothing to do with the style and what he tells a story, but his drawing and his narration was beautiful. Corto Maltese, most probably, and one big influence was probably all these black and white were very popular in the 70s in France. So we had Corto Maltese, and we had Munoz and Sampaio, 2 Argentinian guys who came in Europe to do comics, and they were doing Le Bar à Joe, which is Joe's bar, and the graphic is just beautiful. I mean, the drawing, I learned to appreciate it, and now I still think it's one of my favorite artists, and his narration is fantastic. So that was a big influence, but that's when I was a teenager. But when I was young, I was influenced by Peyo and the Smurfs and Lucky Luke mostly. I really enjoyed the Goscinny scenario as unbeatable.
It is still published here also. So.
Still published, and when you go back and you read Lucky Luke and the scenario in 46 pages, what he has achieved, it's just, well, it's unbelievable.
And is there some, for example, painter or artist, visual artist out of the comics scene you are influenced of?
Oh, I've when I was younger, I dived in. I had a big book on Picasso that I know by heart, and after that, big fan of everything that has done. What's his name? There was a big that most famous British painter, David Hockney. Hockney is a big fan. Yeah, I've seen his exhibition in Paris. He had a big one. Fantastic stuff. Yeah.
Tricky question, maybe. What do you think about popular superhero genre comics? Do you like it even, or do you think that superhero comics is nearly dead and far behind its prime now, or it will survive everything?
It would be hard to answer because when I was young, in French Canada, we had the European and the American. I've read a few Spider-Man when I was young, and I liked the drawing. It was black and white back in the days. No, it was color. What am I saying? And but I really I didn't read a lot of that. I was mostly in European comics. I've tried once in a while. I've read the classic ones, the Watchmen, of course, but I think that's different from what everyday comic books like the superhero stuff is about today. I've read the Watchmen that I've really enjoyed, and the first Batman where he was by Frank Miller. Yeah, that was very interesting. So I had a few friends who said, you have to read that, and they're still very strong in my mind as storytelling, and they're very fantastic. But beyond that, I don't know much. I've tried a few times, but I don't have a lot of attraction. It doesn't attract me.
So maybe my next question has no sense, but I will ask you, if you were asked to create some superhero comic book, which hero would you want to write and draw, or is there any?
Oh, if I can pick up one of these, I don't know a lot of them. So I think when I was young, I was reading the Fantastic Four. Mm-hmm. And one of them was always staying as a monster, like the stone guy, guy. And as a young, I was a teenager, I was thinking, the other one goes back normal, like the Stretch and the Fire guy, but not the Stone. What's his name in English? The Thing, yeah. Yeah, and I think I would do something with him because he's always staying like that, and I think it's quite sad. And I think I would do a psychological version of what he's experienced inside of him, because he's always staying as a monster, as the Thing, yeah.
Okay. You have made some other books about, for example, parenting, about Doctors Without Borders, based on true events. However, we here in Czech Republic, we are not familiar with your fictional work. Can you somehow describe it?
My fictional work, which one are they? They are not published in France anymore, because it was a series. It was a detective kind of. Yeah. Kind of awkward guy, very straight and uptight, and so I was at the time there was Dargo, so I thought, I'm gonna be able to make a living with Dargos, because I was picturing the old guys when they had the series. It was okay. They were okay, and I said I'm gonna do a book that I want to do like Shenzhen and Pyongyang 1 year, and then do a book for Dargo the year after. And what I thought would be just for fun became very popular, and what I thought I would make a living with didn't work at all. So my publisher said, we're not gonna continue publishing. It was called Moroni, and that's fictional. And but then at the same time, Pyongyang was quite a success, and I thought, maybe I should just do the books that I think are important for me.
So you are not more attracted or tempted to do some fiction now?
Fiction, not now. No, biography is still in real life stuff. Maybe someday, but it's kind of there's too much freedom. I like to have Muybridge. It's the life of one guy, and how do you tell that? What's the narration you use to tell that? If it's a fiction, there's too many doors that you can open.
Yeah. We are here in the municipal library. In your opinion, what is the role and purpose of public libraries now in the age of modern technologies, digital technologies, artificial intelligence, and so on?
Oh, I'm a big user of library. I think I go every week. I've read so much comic books in libraries. In the city I am, they have a very, very good collection of comic books. Working on Muybridge, I went to the library because they have all sorts of books that I didn't know about the beginning of cinema, beginning of photography that I've read, that I've taken notes on that, and they had an access to INA, which is like the archives of French video, and I've seen documentary on that were done in the 50s that you can find nowhere else than there, and I've used them because I could see all these old machines, the way they work. They were explaining all that, so I've been using quite a lot of infos from my library in my town, and yeah, I mean, as a guy who works in books, I buy books. I get books by publishers. There's no more place in my home, so I'm really happy to read comic books. And whenever I fall in love with a comic book and I want to pass it around to my friends, I buy it. But now I go first with the library. Yeah. Most of the times.
You have stolen my next 2 or 3 questions, because I wanted to ask you how big is your book, how long and big is your library, private library, and your bookcases, and how long have you spent in libraries? When were you working out?
Because when I was a teenager, I remember, and I've pictured that in one of my comic, the one about my youth when I worked in a factory. Where my father was working, and I showed that I was going to the library, and then all of a sudden I was reading the books that we would buy in the family, and then all of a sudden I go to the library and I see all these comic books that they had, black and white stuff that were just a bit more mature than what I was, and I thought, wow, that's interesting. You can do that, and I've learned so much just going to the library. And for the longest time, my reference were all these books that I've borrowed at the library, because I think I've borrowed all of them, and I was able to see, okay, the scope of what you have today in comic books is this, and you can go in all these directions, and that was a good foundation for me. Yeah.
So maybe 2 last questions. What does a typical day look like for you as a creator today?
Oh, when I go, I have a studio that I share with other artists. They all do drawing. Some do animation, some do illustration, some do cartoon. And so I go to the studio and I try to start working before 10. I prepare my page when I'm on my book. I prepare my page. I don't do the whole storyboard before this. I cannot. I just go along and I say, okay, now I want to talk about that subject in the life of Muybridge, and I know it's going to be 3-4 page, and I prepare my page in the morning and the text, and I draw in the afternoon, and mostly I listen to the radio while I'm drawing, especially when I'm inking, because that's more mechanical. I work on paper. All the people in the studio where I am, they all work on Cintiq and on digital. I like it on paper. It's probably a bit slower, but for me, that's how it's going to be probably for the rest of my life. And the good thing is when I do exhibition, it's on paper. It's not digital process material. And I enjoy to be in front of of a page instead of being in front of a screen. So I do the drawing in blue, and then I ink with pen and ink and all sorts of stuff that are, but mostly it's Chinese inks, very old school stuff. And I scan in color and I remove the blue, so I don't have to erase like I used to do before. It was so tedious. I don't have that anymore. So and then the rest is I correct a few things on my on the computer. Just a small thing, and then that's it. If the color, I do the color at the end when the book is all finished, because after that the process for me is I'm gonna print all that on small paper, on photocopy paper, when I have, I don't know, 60 pages or something, and then I'm going to read that at home with my red pencil, and I'm going to remove and change everything that I want to change, which is fun to do. And then I do kind of a montage of all that. Sometimes I say, this is too fast. I'm going to just shrink that down. I don't have to explain that much. And sometimes it's the opposite. It's like, this is good, but I need more mood. I need to take more of my time, like slow down. And I just insert one page between two or half a page between two, and I move things around. That's where it's interesting to be on computer, because you can move stuff around, and that's how it goes. And I go back and I take pages away, like this is, this is useless, it's too long, and I take it out. I take always, on a book 10 pages out that I've drawn. But if I would do the whole storyboard before, maybe I wouldn't go through that process. But that's the way now I've learned to work. Yeah. Two steps in front and one steps behind.
And are you able to find some time for yourself?
Yeah. I don't work long days, not anymore. Yeah, not when I was younger. I could work a lot. Yeah, but not so much now. I go with the other people around 8 or 7, and then I have my whole evening, and I don't. And now that I don't work at home, since it's a studio, when I close the door, I don't really think about it. Well, yeah, like what am I going to do after tomorrow, but it's not like before where I would go back at night and work on that. Mm-hmm. I don't do that anymore.
And maybe the last curious question, what are you currently working on, if you can tell us?
Yeah, I just finished a small book because it's 70 pages, so for me it's small, and it's the adaptation of a novel. That's something new that I wanted to do. It's not my text, so I take the exact text, like I don't adapt in the sense that, so I just illustrate the text basically. It's very small, it's 16 pages, but I transformed the whole 16 page into a comic of 70 pages. So that was a lot of fun to do, because it's a writer that I really, really like. So I thought, no, I'd like to work with him. And since I know him a bit, he was very enthusiastic. And I thought, wow, that's so cool.
So we are looking forward to. So thank you for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.